carries.
It is 6:30. I'll call this meeting of the St. Mary City Council to order. Roll call, please.
Todd.
Here.
Coberman.
Here.
Chrisman.
Here.
Willoughby. Here. Fitzgerald.
Here.
Ulenhay.
Here.
Flagel.
Here. All rise. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You all received a copy of the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any questions or comments from council? If not, may I have a motion to accept the minutes? So, Mr. Ulenay, Mr. Flegel, vote please. All yeses. Petitions and communications, we have a zoning request from Mr. Daniel Heitkamp, president of Rolling Hill Builders LLC. And you've got a copy of this, asking for approximately 7.571 acres to be rezoned from C2 general commercial to R3 single family residential. May I have a motion to send that to zoning, right? Planning Commission.
So moved.
Ms. Willoughby,
Second
Mr.
that.
Chrisman, vote please. All yeses. Thank you. We also have Chief Mark Ernst wants to talk to us. So Chief, up to you. It's all yours.
Good evening. I wanted to give everybody an update on the school resource officer project that I've been working on. Since I last spoke to you, myself, the director, and the mayor had a conversation with Mr. Overman to discuss that. He indicated that the school was open to the idea, but he requested that I come and speak to the school board. Before I did that, I went to Wapak and spoke with their school resource officer, Jeff Iser. We actually met him in the school. While we were there, we actually got to see some interaction between him and faculty and staff. They all seemed to really appreciate having him there. We sat and met, asked him a lot of questions on how he conducted his daily routine. And before we left, he actually took us into the special needs room, where it was kind of exciting to see the interaction he had with those kids. He knew every kid by name. They were thrilled to see him when we came in the room. So it was very interesting to see it from that aspect. While we talked to him, we asked him what his day was like. He said he was at the school every morning. He reports right to the school. He doesn't even go to the police department. He stays in the high school, but he does leave throughout the day and patrol the other schools. He said that at the other schools and even at the high school, most of the faculty and staff believe that he's actually there all day long, because between classes they see him here and there. They don't even realize that he leaves throughout the day. He says, but they haven't had any major incidents over there. He did talk about a kid that had been arrested for arson, that he had worked with that kid and they're able to bring the kid back into the school, and he counts that as one of his successes because he was able to get the kid to turn himself around and be a contributor to the school and not somebody who's causing problems. So it was quite interesting to hear his take on the school resource officer thing. Everybody seemed very pleased with it and happy with it in their school system. I then went and spoke to the board last Wednesday night. I probably spoke to him for about a half an hour, explained to him what we were looking for, what the school resource officer would do, and I received nothing but good feedback from the school board. They were actually very excited about it. On our way out, we were stopped by members of the public who told us they thought it was a great idea. Then a couple days later, Mr. Overman followed up by emailing me, explaining to me that it went over great with the school board. They're all ready to move forward. We just needed to talk about the split. I thought maybe the mayor could talk about that part. I can't.
Flat-footed here, sir.
Well, I can talk about it.
Well, they wanted to do a 50-50, and I told them that was just not in the realm of possibility. And so I mentioned that council had wanted a 75-25, and he said no, he couldn't do that. So we kind of have reached a point with your approval of a 60-40 split. And that, you know, it's open for discussion, but you know, strictly up to you.
They have the 60, we have the 40.
Yes.
They pay 60, we pay 40.
Just double checking.
Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, yeah.
I do have some numbers for you, and I think some of these were in the packet I gave you last time, but Sue Bax may have to recheck these. This was given to me last summer, but we're talking about $86,593 to cover the cost of an officer. For our split at 40%, that would put us at $34,637. A couple numbers I think Mr. Chrisman might ask about some overtime hours during the summer. I can give you some basic idea there. We did a 3-year study, 2014, 15, and 16, on the summer months on how much overtime we had. We had an average of 977 hours those 3 months each summer the past 3 years. Then we looked at the shifts that we would put Josh on in those months. 41% of our overtime occurs on second and third shifts, so we would be putting Josh on an 8P to 4A shift, which would help reduce that 41%. The extra 60% comes from day shift hours, case investigation hours, and special event hours for like Summerfest and things like that. So 41% is our biggest number working the road, and Josh would be put on in the summertime working those hours to help alleviate some of that overtime cost. And speaking of Josh, as I stated before, if this was to be approved, Josh would be the person I would recommend for the position. Josh has 12 years experience with the department. I think everybody here knows Josh and probably has a good idea why I picked him, because he's actually a really nice guy. He's a solid officer. This is a position of trust because he's going to be unsupervised to a degree, and I have to count on somebody that get the job done. I need somebody that can connect with the kids, and like I said, everybody likes Josh, and then somebody that's going to be professional with faculty and staff out there. Like I said, Josh is a graduate of Memorial High School, and Josh has kids that are in the district, so I think that'll even make him take his responsibilities even more seriously. So Josh is here if anybody would like to ask Josh any questions. Told him he had to do a speech, but
You say 12 years, correct?
he has 12 years on the
And, I
department.
mean, is Josh thinking about any promotion soon? Because he's obviously in that time frame. And I don't know where, it would come up. I know we have, Von Drell's up there a ways, so.
That is a good question. Our next scheduled retirement is Von Drell. He could go in 2 years. If you know Sean, he says he's going to go, but I can see we have a thing called a drop program. It's a very good retirement option where you retire and they invest your retirement money for you. I'm currently in it. It's actually a very good program. I can't guarantee you, but I could see Sean taking advantage of that.
The 86,000, that's wages and benefits, correct?
That includes uniforms, their Y membership, their annual physical, pension, everything but their firearm. The firearm was on there. I took off because we got plenty of firearms.
So that's healthcare and
Yes.
86,000. And how, the 40%, that's not, obviously, I know what it costs us per employee for healthcare. So are they gonna contribute to the healthcare, or is it off the other side where they're just the wages? Ultimately, between the benefits and the wages, it's gonna be 40% our cost, right?
Right, total.
Total.
On those, the wages and the benefits.
Okay, so it's just not the wages, it's
No.
both.
So basically, we're gonna pay him and they'll reimburse us somehow or another, basically.
I don't know how that goes on the county part of it.
Yeah, somehow we would take the total cost and they would pay us, whether it's annually or semi-annually, that 60%. I don't know if Mr. Overman has that final approval at 60%. I'm not sure where that's at.
I
But
still think they have to have a final go. He did meet
Correct.
with them after. Everybody's on board.
they seemed open to it.
I think it was just coming down to us agreeing on the split. And then he was gonna get a final approval from them. But there was not one negative thing. People on the school board that I thought would be difficult were actually the most supportive people on the school board.
Will you have to hire another police officer then, chief?
Yes, the idea would be is we have one candidate left that's worthwhile on the current list. After him, we're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. His name's Jed Walker. He's from Bluffton, I believe. We would be looking at possibly hiring him in January. We have to get him before January 25th because our test expires, or we'd have to give a whole new test. That would actually work out well. Mid-January, after his 10 weeks of field training, that put him in the middle of April. a school would like to have Josh for that last month to acclimate him to the school environment. And then we'll get him to school in the summer, which is a week-long school. And then he'll start up at the end of August with the new school year. So I'd like to get him that month out there just so he can get a feel for how things work before he starts doing it for real.
And Chief, if this were to be approved, do you anticipate the agreement with the school to be something that would have to be approved every year? Or what would the agreement, do you anticipate that looking like?
I looked at Wapauks, I believe theirs was every year. They sat down and made sure everything's the way that both parties wanted it and amended it accordingly. So I think about every year we'd sit down and renew it with them.
And if say for some reason it's not renewed, Josh has a fallback to where he comes back in as a full-time employee here?
Yes, it would be up to the city whether it would keep the new kid, but he might be subject to layoff if that's what we had to do.
Any other maintenance or equipment issues, like you said you were gonna refurbish that Crown Vic Cruiser, is there anything else popping up on top of that that we would be looking at?
I do need probably a few $100s in equipment for that Crown Vic. I have a light bar, a controller. I think I might have to buy a scanner for it, and a rifle. I think we have dual mounts in all our cars, rifle and shotgun, and I already have a shotgun. I don't think I have another rifle for the car. But we pretty much have everything to make it a functioning car. The one thing I thought about doing is, upon approval, is taking it to a body shop and maybe get some of the rust spots taken care of so they don't get bad and the car lasts us a little bit longer. But the car's in pretty good shape. We had 2 Crown Vics, and the city mechanics looked at both cars and took parts off the one we were getting rid of, put it on the other one to make the best car out of the 2.
The school has this TriStar program. Do they have auto body that they might be willing to do that for nothing for us?
I never thought about asking that. They do have auto body, I believe, over in Salina, I think.
Just something to think
It's an
about.
idea.
Concerning the overtime, the one question I had after our last meeting was that if Josh were to go take that position, was approved, is he able to take his normal time off throughout the school year part of it? Or was he gonna be banking all his time for the summertime when his kids are off? And using that so he won't be available for the overtime
Sure.
hours that we potentially would be filling?
I do foresee him using some of his time in the summer, but he'll have a lot of time off during the school year, like there's 2 weeks over Christmas, that he'll have to figure a way, unless he wants to just come back and work the road. And then there's time off during Easter. So there's several times where he has the availability to take that leave time and burn some of that up.
That's gonna be something you kind of work out as you go.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of things to hammer out, but Josh is very cooperative. Josh, very mission oriented. I know he's excited to do it. So I know Josh will work with us and he'll make it work.
And you said he will be going to different schools, like down to Holy Rosary or the Grand Lake Christian, or is he going to go down there?
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, that before we move forward, I won't accept any agreement from this. I don't think the school would do this. The school is very supportive of, I know Holy Rosary. Those 2 schools actually, I feel, are our responsibility as well. So I know with Holy Rosary, they're very connected to the school system, and the school involves them as much as they possibly can. Those schools will not be left out. Grand Lake Christian, they didn't even realize that we would do things for them. We actually go down and give them ALICE training. We do walkthroughs of their building. I think they have, I checked, they have 20 students. Holy Rosary, I think, is about 120. So they would not be left out. I know the school wouldn't tell me to do that, but if the school was to say, you know, we're not going to cover this if you're going to Holy Rosary at Grand Lake, we wouldn't be a part of it then. I think those schools need our service as well.
Okay, Chief, what do you need from council?
Somebody to tell me where we go from here. I need someone to say yes as well.
This is for internal hiring.
Yeah, what Doug is saying is that if the school's final offer is the 60-40 split,
Is that acceptable?
is that acceptable to council? It's acceptable to us.
What's council's wishes?
What's the auditor think?
I think 60/40 is fine, I wouldn't, we can't go no more than that, and then definitely has to be a one-year term.
Definitely one, please.
One-year term,
Okay.
you have to look at
It's
it.
a good way to
Because,
try. If it doesn't
because the
work,
C
we
word,
can always,
C word's right,
you know,
you know.
But
And I
you-
would say at
if
least
you
we,
don't
would-
try it,
I think at
we're
least
never
we'd like to
gonna
do
know.
is get reimbursed twice a year. We don't want every month coming, because you know what, you take that money and you can invest that, and so we,
So there's really no more wiggle room for us to say 65, 35 or something like that? I'm just saying.
you know what,
we
a year
gotta
from
work
now,
out
a year
for
from now,
ourselves,
a
too.
year from now, wherever it is, next year, you know, maybe the city's better off when they can go 50/50, but I'd say right now,
Well,
60/40s.
if that's our best option, I mean,
Don't you agree?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
yeah, I think if we're in better shape next year, we could,
You know, we bannered the number 65, 35 around the room, and, you know, we kind of settled at 60/40, and I said, okay, I'll take that back. I said, I don't know, it's up to council if they.
I mean, they realize they get him 9 out of the 12 months,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So that, you know, we're paying more than our fair share.
he's
The time that
still,
we're getting is the time when we need the coverage most, right, Chief, Mark?
yeah.
I mean, that's that overtime slot,
That-
that's when we
that's
need that extra coverage the most, so we're
The summers-
benefiting, because we may see a reduction in overtime, right?
The summers are worse, everybody wants.
I mean, we're gonna get our coverage.
Vacation. And in the summer, on the weekends, right now, if somebody takes off on a Friday or Saturday night, and we have 3 officers working, we let them go down to 2. We don't like that, because those are our busiest hours, and those are the hours the scariest things happen. But in the summer months, June, July, and August, we do replace, if somebody takes vacation, we do replace that third man, because everybody's out and about, and those are the worst hours, and I don't want to leave 2 guys hanging. So that means there's going to be overtime, and those are the hours he'll be working. And Josh knows
We're
that.
gaining an extra person technically during the busy
Yes.
time, so that's a big positive as far as I'm
And even during the non-busy time, he's an available resource if there was a crisis where we need short people.
I think that was, you know, Josh is like everybody else. You take your vacation summertime.
I'd take many.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so he's got to have that,
This
he's
guy's
got to have that
retired.
ability to take his vacation.
He goes anytime.
So what is council's wish?
The only thing else Jim
Say
might
go
say
forward.
is,
So,
you know, like vacation days or sick days, this, you know, if he's sick and he can't go there,
There'll have to be an official resolution come back.
right, you just can't, we can't put another person in there for sick days.
am I hearing from council that we tell them to proceed?
Okay.
Yes.
We proceed? How's that sound to you?
Sounds good to us.
Thank
I
you,
mean,
Chief.
you know, I think that, God help us, we never have to use somebody like this, but it does give you a good feeling to have somebody like Josh is going to be over there at those schools. You know, nobody's gonna ever know when he's going or whatever, but it does give us an insurance policy.
Well, there's a lot of things that I know you and me personally, I practice and I train, and I hope and pray to God that I never have to use the training in the practice.
That's what this is about. Hopefully we'll never have to use him, but.
I like the idea of the 1-year contract, because we can actually see what savings we're having on the overtime. too.
Well,
It's a good idea, too.
I think both sides are gonna have to kind of work through this. There's a lot unknowns here that we're just gonna have to work through, so. Okay, we good?
I want to thank council for this. I would truly believe this is the best way to protect our schools, so thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Also, on petitions and communications, I'm sure you all received letters from Ms. Christy Guy's 4th grade civics class.
Yes, we did.
And we got quite a number of them asking about a splash pad.
I think it's a great idea myself.
So, Mr. Buck, since you are chair of the Parks and Playground, could we have a Parks and Playground committee meeting to discuss the feasibility of a splash pad?
Sure.
When would be a good time, sir?
Well, I think we have a finance committee meeting next Monday, is that correct?
Yes.
Or looking at it?
21st, I believe.
Yes. So, might as well do it after the finance committee meeting.
Bob and I's on that with you.
Pardon me?
It's me and you and Bob, right?
Yes.
Parks and Recreation.
With that, we told the manager of the department 4 months ago to put it in the budget in 2017.
So we have the Parks and
That would be the 21st. Finance is 5:15. So after that.
so you want it after the finance?
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know, how long do you think finance?
Well, the finance committee meeting really can go as long as we needed to, but at that point, we're gonna give you the 2017 budget with all the forms. It's,
So it could be, half hour, could be a little bit longer.
well, last time it didn't last all that long because there was
Right.
so much information to take, so everyone took the information, you wanted to review it, and then we rescheduled another finance committee meeting. So my guess is it could be very quick.
Yes.
Because it's a lot of information. We'll go through just some of the highlights of it, but I expect it'll be a pretty quick.
Similar, yeah.
And I know the city council has thanked the students of Mrs. Guy's class too, and there's other comments that other students had wrote about, and we'll pass these on to the mayor and the safety service director to read it.
Okay, so we're good for Parks Committee at 5:45 next Monday.
Yeah.
Sounds good?
Deb, you'll send us a reminder too?
I will.
Thank you. 5:15 and 5:45?
Yep. Okay. Covers petitions, communications. Under reports of city officials, we have the mayor's report.
Mr. Harris, I have nothing further to add to that report.
Any questions or comments from council? Okay. Tax Commissioner's report.
Mr. Harris, nothing to add to the tax commission report.
Any questions or comments from council? Okay, thank you. Safety Service Director's report.
Mr. Harris, I have nothing to add, but I'll be glad to answer any questions anyone has.
I thought the interface with the Japanese delegation went very well. Very well.
Yes, you did.
And it looks like everything with the electrical upgrades for the substations are in line right now, time-wise?
The new transformer at the lower substation, which is located at AAB, we're looking at possibly next week before that's actually online because some of the testing that has to be done. Once they bring it online, they have to run it for 24 hours before they do an oil sample, so we're just kind of waiting for that. So, but the progress at Spoke Works and both substations is proceeding nicely.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, moving on. Reports on Committee of City Council, Electric and Communications.
Yes, we had a meeting last Monday night, and we discussed with some of the citizens of St. Mary's the electrical rate increase. We had Courtney and Associates in here to help explain it a little bit. And personally, I think one thing that came out of the information was not only did we have a rate increase for St. Mary's, but there was also an electrical cost increase. So that compounded the increase in everyone's bill to some extent. And then, of course, the change in the
Customer service charge.
customer service charge and the electrical, what is it called?
The PCA.
Yeah, power cost adjustment.
Plus, we had a couple really hot months, so it
Yeah.
kind of was.
So quite a few things compounding made bills look pretty ugly for some people.
And one of the main things they stress is you couldn't compare a last year's bill to this year based on that power cost. Because could have been higher when they looked at the bill this year and tried to compare it, and it was lower last year.
Yeah.
So that was one of the big issues that kind of came forward
Yep.
by discussing with them.
Although to Jim Harris's point, consumers look at their bottom dollar, they look at last year's bill and they compare it to this year. I mean, that's just kind of the natural thing that happens, and I think that's how we would all do it. And I think out of it also, some of the people in the audience suggested that if we have to do this ever again, that we take into consideration some of the other factors as well than just our rate increase. Okay? I think that covers most of it.
Mr. Harris, I had two assignments that came out of that meeting, and one was to get back with Bob Valentine on if we would reconsider adjusting the lower rates. Went back and reviewed that matter, and it took us 2 years to develop, or I should say, it took Courtney and Associates 2 years to develop the rates. We felt that the rates were fair and equitable to all parties involved, so I told Mr. Valentine that we would not be going back and reopening that issue. Cost a lot of money over 2 years to have them to do that. The second thing is he requested that we provide something besides our kilowatt hour, the charges on the kilowatt hour. He asked the rate go up to what it was at 4,000 kilowatts. So I provided a spreadsheet for him today for that. Anybody wants that spreadsheet, I'd be happy to forward it on to him, but we have it.
Are you talking, what's the breakdown? As
Yeah,
you use power?
Yeah, we did 500 kilowatt hour, increments.
500, 1,000.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, once we got past 1,500, we went to 2,000, 2,500, and on up.
Okay, yeah,
Okay?
Yep,
So
fair
he was
enough.
satisfied, I believe he was satisfied with both those things.
okay.
Okay?
I think one important point that Courtney and Associates made, not only the meeting but some committee meetings earlier, is that the rates are generating exactly the amount anticipated. These guys are good, that's why they're doing this business, but they said you do this is what you're gonna get, and that has matched up almost, it's quite amazing, really.
Yeah, and our rates are still very competitive with other municipalities, but they're significantly lower than the private sector, GP&Ls, AEP, Midwest Electric.
One of the things I think we should consider, and this is after the budget's done, but prior to a rate increase, we've raised a lot of rates in a lot of different departments. The only thing I'm really hearing from the general public is, why'd we wait so long? And because obviously you had to increase it so much at one time, as maybe every 2 years after the budget's done, you have a committee meeting with the auditor there and that particular department head with you guys, and we're figuring out whether it's the electric department, whether it's general services, or whether it's just the general fund, that we talk about each one of those different departments, and we know where those rate increases are gonna be, or what the future is at. So instead of having an 8% increase, we may, maybe down the road you say, hey, we'll implement a 2% phased in rate, but we know that's coming. And it might be something we'd wanna consider, I think, probably after the budget process. And I'm not sure if it's necessary this next year, because we've already been through this, but maybe every 2 years we do some type of, internal meeting with the department heads to know where we're going here. And if we don't know, we need to find that out, because it's something that I think they gotta look at closely.
I think we concur on.
I think that's a good idea.
There's just certain things.
Yeah, people are continually amazed that the rates didn't go up sooner or more incrementally through the years.
Would point out, don't forget, the water rates are scheduled to increase over the next, 10 years?
Well, the next 6 years, they'll go up 14.9, then 3% every year after that.
So that's already in place.
If it's needed, and we have the ability to withhold that increase if we feel the fund is adequate, but that would be a decision that the auditor would have to be,
Withhold
involved with.
3%.
It's gonna go up 14.9% for the next 6 years, and then after that is 3%. Basically just the cost of living increase for the water rates.
But that's the part we can look at.
Yes, that's correct.
Not the 14%.
No, the 14.9 we need to pay for the new water plant, but after that, we can,
Our successors will worry about that. So.
yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that this council has to take the heat on that thing, but had over the past, in the years past, had they been doing this, it would have just been part of life, and, it just phased right into it.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, moving on. Readings of ordinances and resolutions. We have no third readings. We have no second readings. Under new legislation, we have ordinance 2016-33. May I have an ordinance to read, please? Mr. Chrisman, Mr. Buck, vote please. All yeses. Fiscal officer statement to council of the city of St. Mary's, Ohio. as fiscal officer of the city of St. Mary's, Ohio, I certify in connection with your proposed issue of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $27,500, the bonds, for the purpose of paying the property owner's portion in anticipation of the collection of special assessments of the cost of improving Vine Street, Hawthorne Street, Chestnut Street, South Street, Executive Drive, William Street, Perry Street, and South Park Drive between certain termini by reconstructing and resurfacing streets, constructing curbs, gutters, sidewalks, and drive approaches, together with the necessary related improvements and appurtenances hereto, the improvement, that this estimated life or period of usefulness of the improvements is at least 5 years. The estimated maximum maturity of the bonds calculated in accordance with section 133.2 of the revised code is at least 20 years, because the special assessments will be payable over a period of 5 years, and the bonds are to be issued in anticipation of the collection of those special assessments. The maximum maturity of the bond is 5 years. Signed, Doug Reason, Auditor. So the ordinance number 2016-33, providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $27,500 for the purpose of paying the property owner's portion in anticipation of the collection of special assessments of the cost of improving Vine Street, Hawthorne Street, Chestnut Street, South Street, Executive Drive, William Street, Perry Street, and South Park Drive between certain termini, and reconstructing and resurfacing streets and constructing curbs, gutters, sidewalks, and drive approaches, together with all the necessary related improvements and appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Foxhoff.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, this is an annual ordinance that we do. It involves our street program. This particular ordinance is about the 2015 street program. It involves the 8 streets that were either reconstructed or resurfaced. This basically is the last step in that whole process. As we indicated before, we had invoiced the property owners to give them an opportunity to pay us. We received payment about 53% of those. The balance we'll have to pay. Basically, this allows us to do an internal loan, and we'll pay the bank. It was just a 1-year note from the bank. So this is just a common practice that we do with the street program. This is the last step. We would like to move forward with this to settle this issue, so we would request it be passed under suspension of the rules.
Okay, I have a request for suspension of rules.
Motion to suspend the rules and pass.
Mr. Coverman? Mr. Flegel? Vote to suspend the rules, please. All yeses. Now may I have a motion to pass, please, under emergency. Mr. Bubb? Mr. Ulenik? Vote, please. All yeses. Thank you. Okay, I have ordinance 2016-34. May I have a motion to read, please?
So moved.
Ms. Willoughby, Mr. Ulenik, all vote, please. All yeses. Ordinance 2016-34, an ordinance authorizing the declaration of official intent under the U.S. Treasury regulations with respect to reimbursements from note and bond proceeds of temporary advances made for payment prior to issuance, and reimbursement for expenses relating to the acquisition of residential and commercial meters for the AMI metering project, upgrades to the Spoke Works substation, including the acquisition and installation of a transformer and site work, the acquisition, construction, improving, equipping, and installation of concrete and metal structures and switchgear buildings and various electrical equipment and upgrades to the Lower substation, the AAP substation, including the acquisition and installation of a transformer, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Foxhover.
Mr. Harris, this ordinance will allow us to basically get reimbursed. Our plan is to borrow $2 million. Well, let me just back up a little bit for our history. Initially, with these distribution upgrades, we had planned on borrowing $6 million for the upgrades. We weren't sure how fast these upgrades would happen. We had a schedule, but we knew it was fluid. So we decided we would borrow $2 million initially. We decided we'd borrow $2 million initially, which we did. We borrowed 2.1. We're at that point again where we have been paying for some of these costs out of our operating cost. We talked with Courtney, we talked with bond counsel. Their recommendation was to do a declaration of intent to reimburse ourselves. So when we go out to seek a note on this other, next $2 million, we can reimburse our 614 account that we had been using to cover some of these costs, and then also use that money to help pay for some of the big items that are still out there. As you recall, the AAP failed transformer there set us back about $1.3 million. We hadn't planned on it, but we had to pay for it. And that's really kind of why we're at this point now. We weren't sure at what point we would get to the next $2 million, but we're there. This simply will allow us to make an official intent to reimburse ourselves for some of the expenses we've already had.
This is primarily talking to bond counsel for income tax purposes, treasury regulation. This ordinance in itself does not create any debt.
Correct.
We're just saying, by passing this tonight and setting this time frame, because we need to pass this tonight, we can go back, any bills that we paid within the past 60 days, we can reimburse ourselves and not violate any IRS regulations. And it would be anticipated then in the next meeting or a couple of meetings from now, we'll actually have the actual note ordinance.
We're planning on the 28th, the next council meeting. Bond counsel said they'd be that much time to do it. We're gonna look locally at some banks, I believe, for another note. We'd like to get it accomplished before the end of the year so we can put it in the budget. And that way, these notes would be due in May, as the first one would be. So for that reason, we would request that it be passed under suspension of the rules so we can get the paperwork done.
Okay. We have a request to suspend the rules on this. Mr. Colerman? Mr. Fitzgerald, vote to suspend the rules, please. All yeses. Now may I have a motion to pass it? Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Christman? All yeses.
Thank you.
Okay, I have now Resolution 2016-19. May I have a motion to read, please?
So moved.
Ms. Rolby?
Second.
Mr. Yolinek? Motion to read, please. Once again, please. All yeses, thank you. Resolution 2016-19, a resolution authorizing a release of easement. Mr. Foxhoven.
Mr. Harris, this is a resolution that involves Fort Rosary Church. Obviously, they're going through an expansion. The church owns the entire block. This piping in the easement is a sewer line. We no longer have a need for it. It services the church and that property only. If council allows us to give up that easement, they will take responsibility for any care and maintenance of that sewer line. They want to build a structure over this, is why they would like us to release this easement to them. They're moving very quickly through that process, and so we would request this be passed under suspension of the rules as well.
Do I need to suspend the rules on this one?
Yeah.
Okay. I got a request to suspend the rules. Ms. Roldan? Mr. Coverman, vote to suspend, please. All yeses. May I have a motion to pass, please?
Motion to pass.
Mr. Yolinek?
I'll second that.
Mr. Christman, vote to pass, please. All yeses. Since there's no money, I had to ask you. It's a legal thing. It's only like a releasing. That's why you sit beside me.
Greg, on that, will there be a written agreement with the church on that, with how we normally do that with the abandoned, for the utility maintenance? Or is it just, I guess through the ordinance, is that how that's
The
worked?
resolution indicates that they'll be responsible.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Knowing this, I know that they replaced the sewer line through there, so.
Okay. Yeah, plus, if there's ever this, 20 years down the road, come back and pull up this.
Well, see,
resolution.
originally the church, they didn't own the whole block, so I think it went through an alley there.
Yes.
Yeah, there was an alley, there was actually
And
houses on either
that's where it
side.
was, so once they acquired the whole block, there's no purpose for this anymore. From the public point of view.
We now have Resolution 2016-20. May I have a motion to read, please? Mr. Crispin, Ms. Wolby, vote to read, please. All yeses. Resolution 2016-20, An emergency resolution authorizing employment of an auditor for 2016 and following years. Mr. Foxhoven?
Mr. Harris, I could speak a little bit about it. Mr. Reason can chime in if he would like to, but as I understand it, the state for the last 5 years has conducted these audits. The state will allow us to contract with a private firm to do this prior to the state being involved. The prior 14 years, I believe, previous 14 years, we had a private firm conduct the audit. The state has given us permission to go out from under their watch into the private firm, and that's what we would like to do. You can see it's for this year, so for that reason, we request that this be approved under suspension of the rules as well.
Do we have paid state in the past?
The costs are about the same, yes.
Just curious.
The state don't want to do it no more.
It's really,
The state, when the state took it over from independent auditor five years ago, they wanted that business to keep their people really busy, and I think they have lost people to retirement and have not filled those positions, so they don't want to do this part of it, so they're going back to the independent auditors, which they picked, and the state actually did
Designates who those.
they did all the work for us. I had to pick like 2 firms, they picked 3, and it was,
Okay.
as I understand, yeah, this is their decision, not ours.
Yeah.
right.
And this Julia group, we're very familiar with. In fact, they've been helpful even in some of these electric issues.
Their name has popped up over the years quite a few times.
Yeah.
And so they're familiar with our situation, and I think it was our preference that we go with them. The cost's about the same.
Okay, we have a request to suspend the rules. What is council's wishes? Mr. Coberman?
Motion to suspend the rules.
Motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Coberman, second by Mr. Christman. Vote to suspend, please. All yeses. May I have a motion to pass, please?
Motion to pass.
Mr. Coberman, Mr. Christman, vote to pass, please. All yeses.
Thank you.
Scheduling miscellaneous and closing, we have a finance committee meeting for 5:15, November 21st. Everyone good with that? Yep. Okay. And then we have a request for executive session.
Before we go into executive session, I forgot, my apologies to council. I had a correspondence with Reverend Tim Smith this week regarding next year on August 10th and 11th of 2017, a Global Leadership Summit, and his church is willing to pay any council member who would wish to attend the summit's 2 days in Lima. And I understand that our police chief and fire chief went to it last year and highly recommended it. But I will warn you that it's during Summerfest. So anybody who would like to attend this meeting or like more information, I'll give you as much as I know about it. Contact me soon, because I'd like to respond to Reverend Smith and let him know that we have an interest or we don't have an interest. Okay? That's it. Sorry for the interruption.
I have a request to go into executive session to discuss personnel, employment, and collective bargaining. And I guess, gentlemen, there will be action taken after the executive session. So may I have a motion to go into executive session? Mr. Buff?
Motion to go into executive session.
Ms. Willoughby, vote to go into executive session, please. All yeses? Okay. We are now back from executive session. We have a request to accept the terms of the agreement. Am I saying that right, Pat?
Yes.
Okay. May I have a motion to accept the agreement? Ken?
So moved.
Robin? Vote, please. All yeses. Is there anything else come before council? Mr. Buff?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn from Mr. Buff.
Second.
Second by Mr. Yulnay. Vote. All yeses. Thank you.
Yes. This press won't go to the agreement.
Yeah.